How's it going, everybody? In today's video, I want to look at my 2025 NFL draft board. Of course, I had last year's draft board, which was a huge series on this channel, where we had 267 total players on my board, which I finished with. We had the stream as well, but this year, I am probably going to do it again. I don't know if I'll stay on Google Sheets. I might move this over to Excel. However, we have currently 113 players as of May 20th on my board, and let's just go through these guys. All right, starting off actually with my grading system. As you saw, if you guys were part of the board last year, I had grades on these guys. For example, like 7.0 or 6.53, like the actual grades that I would give to these prospects. I don't have them graded yet. Obviously, I go through their statistics, film, all that stuff, and that's going to be in January minimum. But for the preseason, I always like to kind of give them a prediction of where I think they're either going to be or where they are right now. For example, like a Carson Beck or a Shedeur Sanders, who I should have in the blue. These guys are projected first rounders, and I have them projected as first round grades. Basically, that's what it means. And if you guys want to look over here to the grades, you can see like early first round grades, your mid, late first round grades, early second, late second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And again, these grades are on how good I think these prospects are and how good they will be, not as a ranking in terms of what round I think they'll go. That is factored into the draft grades, but not as much as stuff like how good I think they are, including the film and the stats. But let's get right into this video. But also before that, man, it's hot. It's 80 degrees out. But make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, as always. But starting off with the quarterback position, man. Carson Beck is my quarterback one as of right now. He has phenomenal accuracy. He had a 72% completion percentage last year on an average depth of target of 8.5 yards, over almost 4,000 yards passing, 24 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions, fifth highest quarterback rating. Very live arm, and he brought a really nice air raid attack to the Georgia offense last year that I think Stetson Bennett kind of didn't do. And then the huge thing about Carson Beck for me is his pressure to sack ratio. 13.8% is really, really low. So like Carson Beck, I think he's my number one quarterback right now. And then Shedeur Sanders is my number two. I like Shedeur Sanders. I know some people can be really low on him. I still think he's a top 10 prospect. If you guys haven't watched my top 10 prospects for the next year's draft video, go watch that. He was my number 10, and he's another guy who's really good in the pocket, very good accuracy, 69% completion percentage last year. The only question mark that I have about him is his feel for pressure. 25% pressure to sack ratio is really high, and I know the Colorado offensive line wasn't that great last year, but that's kind of the only question mark I have about him. But other than that, good arm. He's very good in the pocket. And then you have your second round guys like Milroe, guys like Quinn Ewers. Milroe, I like a lot on the ground. I don't know how much I love him through the air. But again, he had a really, really good second half through the air. He was top 10 in big time throws last year, according to PFF. Very, very high velocity on his balls. It's just kind of lacking a little bit of touch. However, I still have him as my quarterback 3, and as well, a bowling ball style of a running quarterback. He'll really it's hard to tackle, especially with those arm tackles through his legs. He'll break through those all day. Quinn Ewers, I have as my fourth quarterback. I don't know if I'd have him in the first round or a first round grade on him. I don't know how good he is in bigger moments, and as well, like, look at the Washington game, kind of really felt like Adonai Mitchell was trying to really lead that offense, especially telling Quinn Ewers, give me the ball on a fade route. And I don't know, his film wasn't all that impressive when I was watching guys like Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks, Christian Jones, and Xavier Worthy, who were all drafted last year. His accuracy is really, on throws outside of like 20 yards, it's really spotty. So Quinn Ewers is my quarterback 4. Jackson Dart, I like a lot. Very athletic, good arm as well, great pocket mobility, and had a good year at Ole Miss last year as well. Dillon Gabriel, left-handed quarterback, is always, not the greatest thing. We saw that with Michael Penix Jr. Him getting knocked down a ton in the draft process. He was drafted 8th. That was kind of crazy. But Gabriel is 24 years old and has been in college football for a long time, but he's transferring from Oklahoma to Michigan or to Oregon, and Oregon is my favorite to win the national championship probably this year, them or Ohio State. And he has another live arm, very accurate, very good in the pocket. Drew Aller is a weird guy. He was really good against bad competition, but not the best against good competition. We can look at Michigan. We can look at the Ohio State game. He's just young, and I think he will not. I don't think he'll be in this year's class unless he has a really, really amazing year at Penn State. I don't think he'll be in the class. He's still only 20 years old, and I think he just needs more experience. Again, with him, good accuracy, but it's a bit spotty. Good arm, but it's a bit spotty. So for him, yeah. And then Noah Fafita out of Arizona, very, very live, strong arm, good athlete, bit shorter. I think he's around 6'1", 6'2", maybe 210 pounds. But again, an athletic guy, good arm. And again, you pair him with Tetairoa McMillan. Very good combination out there in Arizona. Cameron Ward, transfer from the UW to Miami. He had a really, really good beginning of the year. Kind of fell off a little bit, as well as the rest of the Washington State team. They were a top 15 ranked team, and they fell all the way to, I think, a losing record or something like that. But bigger guy, good on the ground. Donovan Smith, similar thing. Very good production through the air. Good on the ground, good athlete. Riley Leonard was hurt last year, transferred from Duke to Notre Dame. Older guy at 24, but I think he'll be solid in Notre Dame. Good accuracy, but for him, he's a very sneaky athleticism. And I think that was seen against, I forgot who Duke, they beat Clemson. They beat Clemson week 2, and that was a huge win for them. Tyler Van Dyke, transferred from Miami to Wisconsin. He had a really good first half of the year, until they lost a really weird game in week 5. I forgot who they faced. Will Howard, transfer from Kentucky State. I think it was Kent State to Ohio State. Really methodical guy. Good accuracy, short accuracy, but not a very live arm. And then you got KJ Jefferson. Connor Weigman. People are way too high on Weigman or whatever. He has had no production, realistically. He got injured in the beginning of the season last year. And I don't know, people are raving of him as a top 6 or 7 quarterback in this class. I don't see it. And then you have Grayson McCall, obviously. Really, really good year in his freshman year at Coastal Carolina. They were a top, I think, 25 team when he was with them as a freshman. And then now he had an injury season or a regression season last year and then transferred out. Now we're moving on to the running backs. We got a really good running back class. Last year was a terrible running back class. This year is a really, really good running class. I'm not going to lie. Ollie Gordon, 1,700 yards on the second most carries. Very, very good running back, as well as, 1,732 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns on 6.1 yards per carry. Won the Doak Walker. Great initial burst. Yeah. Ollie Gordon, very good running back. And then you have Omarion Hampton, who is another phenomenal guy. Where is his stats? He had 1,500 yards at North Carolina with Drake May on 5.9 rushing yards per carry. Another really good guy, especially can run inside and outside of the tackle box. And he'll have another year of a backfield to himself. Expect another really, really productive year from him. Quentin Judkins, the best inside the tackle rusher, I think, in my opinion, this year. Big dude at like 6 foot, 221 pounds, a bruiser style of running back. Had an efficiency drop off at Ole Miss last year. Obviously, you can see the Ohio State transferred this year. But again, this dude, phenomenal running back. 2 straight years of 1,100 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns or 14 touchdowns. Yeah. And then Travion Henderson. Very, very, very efficient. Kind of the opposite of Judkins. He is really more of a lateral kind of running back. But he had a huge injury issues in the last 2 years, which has kind of dropped his production off. But his efficiency has still been there. He's run over 5 yards per carry every year of his career, including his really good freshman year at Ohio State, joining a backfield with Judkins. But Henderson, is efficient, and he is very elusive. Great lateral running back. Donovan Edwards, very good running back as well. Obviously, he's had some of the biggest moments in college football history. Had 2 touchdowns in the championship. Always dominates Ohio State, but had a humongous, again, efficiency drop-off. He had 7 yards per carry in 2022. Went all the way down to 4.4 this year. But with Blake Corum out, or Blake Corum actually got drafted, Donovan Edwards should have a backfield to himself. I'd probably expect a 1,000-yard year, as well as another good guy. Really good short area quickness, and then he's got the burst to really run away from guys. We've seen that in the national championship. Then we got Taj Brooks, Trevor Etienne, and Ashton Jeanty. I think I'm going to end up moving Jeanty a lot higher because he's a very interesting one. He was the highest graded receiving running back last year at a 91.6 receiving grade in 2023 with 47 receptions, 569 receiving yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns. And also another good guy outside of the tackle. Trevor Etienne, another explosive guy. This is wrong. He's at Georgia right now. And then you have Taj Brooks, another efficient guy, great at forcing missed tackles. Raheem Sanders, injury last year limited him. He transferred from Arkansas to South Carolina. He's like 230-something pounds, but he's fast. He top 20 miles per hour too. And then you got J. Devin Neal, Damian Martinez, Jordan James, DJ Giddens as well. Pretty solid running back class, and I have already 14. And then the wide receiver class is, not just as good as last year's class, but it's very good. Luther Burden, the most explosive receiver in this class, phenomenal straight line speed, and is the best slot right now. He played 80% of his snaps in the slot. He was leading the FBS in receiving yards up until like week 8 or week 7. Then you have Tyrone McMillan. He had 1,400 yards last year, 6'5", 210 pounds. Great as a contested catch guy, good after the catch. Another very good receiver. He was my 5th best player in this class. Luther Burden is my 2nd best player in this class. Then you have Emeka Egbuka. Had a big fall off with Colin McCord because McCord was just not. I don't think he was built for Ohio State really, and Emeka Egbuka was kind of put on the sideline really, or it just wasn't as targeted as much. And then you had Marvin Harrison there as well, who was his biggest competition. But when you had C.J. Stroud, he had 1,100 yards. Emeka Egbuka has very solid hands as well. Evan Stewart is transferring to Oregon, or has transferred to Oregon. And, he has not had the college production that you would expect from a guy that I have listed in the 2nd round. Lance, can you turn that shit off? Evan Stewart wouldn't have the production you would kind of look for than a guy that I have within my top 30 currently. I think I have him even higher. But 500 yards in the last 2 years, but they've come on some really good games. It's just injuries and quarterback inconsistencies at Texas A&M that have kind of plagued him a lot. And he's transferring to Oregon, who now have 2 really good quarterbacks with Dante Moore, Dylan Gabriel. So he's going to get, and he is, his teammate Tez Johnson's right here as well. But I think he gets the bulk of the targets, really. Can play in the short game. Great speed as well. Can go on a ton of go routes. Like him a lot. Tez Johnson, my only concern about him is he's 160 pounds listed. But he's a shifty receiver. And that's really how he makes a lot of his production after the catch. And then, it's either him or Stewart is the wide receiver 1 at Oregon. Either one of these are going to grow into either a 1st rounder or early 2nd rounder. Torrey Horton, 6'1", 210 pound receiver from Colorado State. He's one of my favorite underrated guys last year. 2 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons at Colorado State. And again, another guy who's really good on go routes, really fast. Not the best after the catch, but good as a contested catch receiver as well. Trey Harris, straight line speed, a ton of chunk yardage plays for him, but inconsistent. Also inconsistent hands as well. I had a drop rate of like 7% last year too. Isaiah Bond, Alabama receiver. He was the guy that made that huge catch in the Iron Bowl. And then now he was a 5-star out of high school. Now he's transferring to Texas. He'll be their wide receiver 1 as Texas lost 3 NFL wide receivers. Whittington, Adonai, and Xavier Worthy. So he should get a ton of targets there. And Alik Ayumamor, he was the one that dunked on Travis Hunter, who I'll mention later in this video. Obviously, I don't have him as listed as receiver, but he's solid, another bigger receiver. And then you have some other guys like Restrepo, Wells Jr., Deion Burke, Mario Williams, Dominic Lovett, Singer, and Fleming. A lot of guys that I've transferred over as well. Like, I transferred over Mario Williams, USC to Tulane. I transferred over Lovett because he didn't declare. Singer transferred from USC to Utah. And then Fleming, of course, didn't declare. He's had an extra year from the COVID year as well. Now moving on to the tight ends. Very, very, very short list for the tight ends. I only really know the most about Colson Loveland. And then these other guys are just kind of there. Michael Trigg was a carryover from last year's class because he didn't declare. But Colson Loveland, very fluid tight end, can run routes really well, is great over the middle of the field, and is good after the catch. Loveland, great player. Michael Evans, don't know the most about him, but I think he had like 400 yards or 300 something yards at Notre Dame last year. Just good check down option for him. And then Bryson Nesbitt, Luke Lackey, and then Michael Trigg. Similar thing with the offensive line. You'll see the tackles mainly, but then I have some of the interior offensive line guys. The offensive line class, you usually have to wait until the draft to see who everybody declares. And offensive line is such like it's a position that you really can either grow or completely fall off within the regular seasons. Starting with the tackle class, I've got Will Campbell. He was my 4th ranked player in next year's class, of course. 6'6", 325 pounds. Really good or quick kick slide that allows him to win a lot of reps early, and as well as good power, especially within his core and his upper body. Good run blocker as well. And then you have Kevin Banks Jr. Really impressed me last year with his tape going up against Dallas Turner. Just another really big wall. He's huge. He's like 330 pounds, 6'5", I think, or 6'4". But very good power as well. Good run blocker. Johnny Cornelius. And then you have Josh Cornley Jr., the both Oregon tackles. I like Johnny the best. He allowed 0 sacks. I think he only allowed 13 pressures last year. Very athletic right tackle. Moves very well. And then Josh Cornley, again, allowed 2 sacks at Oregon, but another very good tackle. Especially when I was watching the Jax Paris Johnson, I noticed that these tackles are pretty good. Johnny Savainea, hard to pronounce, but at Arizona, had a weird year last year. He wasn't very great. He wasn't graded highly. I think he allowed 3 sacks. But again, with Arizona's team, they're a team that could rise a ton, and his draft stock, depending on what happens. But again, bigger tackle and can play guard as well. He played guard his freshman or sophomore year, whichever year it is. Emory Jones Jr., the right tackle from LSU, is either between Oregon or LSU that have the best tackle duo. Good athletic, good pass blocking right tackle who can also be a good run blocker. And then Jonah Moheim is a transfer over from last year's draft board. Didn't declare. Didn't have the greatest year at USC. I mean, he was kind of the only good USC offensive lineman last year. It really did feel like the more consistent one. And I have him listed in the 4th round right now. But I'll really quickly go over this interior offensive line because there aren't a ton of guys. Like Tyler Booker, I think is the best. Him and Tate Ratledge are really tied for the best guard right now. And then you have Donovan Jackson, who another carryover from last year, didn't declare. Jaden Roberts, I have as a right tackle. He's a guard. And then you have Connor Colby. And then Parker Brailsford, center, transfer from Washington to Alabama. And then you have Bryce Foster, another carryover. I'll hopefully get more into these offensive linemen once I get more information on them when the season actually comes out. But outside of that, the tackle class is the most well-known. But now we're actually getting to the fun part of the board, which is the defensive class. As you can see, they are all green right now, every position. This defensive class is the best. I mean, it's one of the best I've ever seen. It's rivaled with only the 2022 defensive class. That's the Sauce Gardner, Aiden Hutchinson class. I mean, that's one of the best defensive classes, I think, in history, or will be. But starting off with James Pierce, he's my number 1 guy on this board. My only blue chip, or near blue chip, I'll probably have him just under the 7 range. 6'5", 242 pounds, had a 21% pass rush win rate. Very, very good edge rusher. at 9.5 sacks, but it felt like he was more or less. He is in that Will Anderson style of edge rusher build, a little bit lighter, but a guy with really good athleticism, long wingspan that wins primarily with the bull rush and their athleticism off the edge. Technically sound as well, but some of these guys I would say are a bit better technically. But this edge classes, the majority of them are bull rushers, power rushers, kind of. You got Nick Scorton. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. His main wins are bull rushes and spin moves. Again, like I mentioned last year with Jonah Ellis. He is a guy with a really good spin move. Scorton is a really good guy with a spin move because it's just long wingspan, just knock the defenders back and then win that way. Jack Sawyer, him and JT Tuimoloau are transferred or decided to stay at Ohio State, so they transfer over from last year's board as well. I would prefer Jack Sawyer. He had the better production. He's the more consistent edge rusher out of the two. Another guy who is he was a jack linebacker in 2023 or 2022 really. This year he bulked up a lot more, played the edge primarily, huge arms, but bull rush type as well. It's kind of how he wins a lot of his rushes and had 6 sacks last year. DT Tuimoloau, 6'4", 271-pound edge rusher, another bull rush guy. And my main issue with him is consistency. He's got multiple games with 0 pressures, multiple games with 1 pressure, but then you have the big games like every year Penn State. He, in 2022, had 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 2 sacks, an interception, 2 forced fumbles against Penn State. 2023, 2 sacks, forced fumble, and I think a pass block. Crazy against Penn State, but again, another bull rush guy, very strong, lower body, and also a good edge setter, good against the run. Abdul Carter is moving from an off-ball linebacker to a full-time edge rusher, bulked up from around like 240 to 250, where he's listed now. So he's kind of an unknown. His pressure stats were good last year in like the small percentage that he did rush, but now we'll get a full year of him being a full-time pass rusher. Good athleticism. That's kind of the really big hype around him is the athleticism. So we'll have to see that around Penn State. Principally, Uman transferring from Florida to Ole Miss. Very good bend and athleticism off of the edge. Had like 7 sacks last year. He was in my top 15 edge rushers going into the draft, and then obviously he decided to transfer instead of going in. Ashton Giotti, big edge rusher out of Louisville. Again, a power rush guy. I forgot his listed size. It has to be like 265, something like that. Strong player. Again, bull rush guy. Mykel Williams is a guy that is another guy that can go up the board for me. I don't know if it was 6 sacks or 4 sacks last year, but he is kind of a tweener, not a tweener. He can play the defensive tackle position and he can play the edge rusher position, kind of like a 3-4 defensive end is kind of what his scheme fit is now. And again, he is another guy that can rise up the board. Josiah Stewart is a guy that decided to stay last year from Michigan, had a very good year last year. Camion Rutger at UNC is here as well. Landon Jackson, Tyler Barron, and then Akeem Messidor, who is a transfer over from last year's board. Getting into the interior defensive line class, another very good class. Mason Graham was the Rose Bowl MVP. Was the 4th highest rated defensive tackle last year. 6'3", 318 pounds, very good run defender. That's kind of his best attribute, really. Blew up a ton of yards for loss at the Alabama game. I think it was 3 or 4. And good pass rusher as well. Had a top, I think it was he had the 11th highest pass rush win rate at around 11.4 for defensive tackles, which is a good number. And then you have Deone Walker, huge nose tackle, 3-tech, 2-eye type of defensive tackle, 342 pounds listed, of I think 6'4", big dude. Also another good run stuffer and uses his bull rush and forklift tactic to create a lot of pressure. Kenneth Grant is a smaller but a very good pass rusher from Michigan. You have Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant here. Similar in that conversation, you had last year Chris Jenkins, who went in the third round last year, or the second, to the Bengals. And then Kenneth Grant, really good pass rusher at around like 299 pounds, 6'3". Dante Corleone, transfer over from last year's class, was the highest rated interior defensive tackle in 2022 in his freshman season. Didn't have the greatest year last year, but we'll see what he does at Cincinnati. And is currently listed as my number one nose tackle, like true nose tackle or one tech. Tyleik Williams, transfer over from last year's class. Howard Cross, again, very good pass rusher here. Walter Nolan was the number one rated player in the 2022 or 2021 class, and then went to Texas A&M. Things didn't really work out as well, transferring to Ole Miss. And I think he was the number one player in the portal as well this year. Bear Alexander is in the portal. He did play at USC last year, but does not have a home right now. He is eligible for this year's class, but if I were to put money on him being here in like 6 months' time, he will not be here probably. And then Nazir Stackhouse, nose tackle from Georgia. I have him this low, like a 6th round grade, because he is not the greatest pass rusher. But again, he's a solid run defender. Then you have Harold Perkins as my best inside linebacker. I have him within my top 10. Love Harold Perkins' ability because he is a tweener. He is basically a tweener, is an edge rusher and an off-ball linebacker combined into one. Had 5.5 sacks last year, had 7.5 sacks in 2022, 24 pressures. Very good pass rusher as a blitzer, especially off the edge. Just the athletic ability to just bend around the edge as a linebacker is very good. Can blitz through the A-gap as well. And then in coverage, he allowed a passer rating of like 70, which is very good for a linebacker. 0 touchdowns, had an interception, has good feel for zone coverage. I think Harold Perkins is kind of putting it all together as the best linebacker in this class, as well as he's 6'1", 220 pounds, so he won't be a true edge rusher. I'd rather him kind of be that weak side guy who can either blitz or play in coverage, can travel with slot receivers. He played against Luther Burden, had a good game against him when he was guarding him. Like Harold Perkins a ton. And then you have Barrett Carter, another weak side linebacker. As you see, I have the W on here. He is a thumper style of weak side linebacker. What I mean by that is a downhill run defending type of guy. Not the greatest in coverage and not the greatest feel for zone, but as a run defender and a thumper, he is best in that role. Jay Higgins is just a tackle machine. He was also really highly graded at Iowa. Danny Stutzman was a very good guy who decided to come back this year. He was eligible for last class. Jaden Dumas-Johnson is a money linebacker, which kind of means he plays everywhere, can play weak, strong side, can defend slots. Kind of just ran around everywhere at Georgia, transferred to Kentucky, and then Salamondon Jr. And then moving on to the last two classes, which are the cornerback and safety class. You've got Will Johnson, who is my favorite cornerback in this year's class, had a 29 passer rating allowed, 3 or 4 interceptions, I forgot what the number is, but 7 interceptions in the last 2 years, has played the one or the receiver one at every step of the way, had 4 games last year where he didn't allow a yard. But the only guy who's really gotten to Will Johnson is Marvin Harrison, and that's a good sign. Against Rome Odunze, he allowed one big play. I think it was like a 40-yard play. But outside of that, played very well against Odunze. And the rest of the competition, NFL competition, he's been starting 2 years at Michigan. And again, if the only guy that really beat you last year or in your career was Marvin Harrison, that's a very good sign. Will Johnson, I love a ton. He's 6'2", 202 pounds, is the best press man corner in this class, best man coverage cornerback, to be honest. And then you have Benjamin Morrison. He was my 11th best player in next year's class. He had a really, really, really good 2022 season in his true freshman. 6 interceptions, as well as a pick 6. This year, had a bit of a regression, allowed 3 touchdowns, just because he played better competition, including Marvin Harrison, of course, when they played Ohio State. But very good overall, good feel for zone, good in man. And then you have Travis Hunter, who is my 3rd best. I do have Hunter. Actually, this is an error. Travis Hunter is over Morrison. But I don't know where kind of Travis Hunter is going to play in the NFL. Wide receiver cornerback hybrid, played 1,074 snaps last year, which is a humongous number. And as a receiver, he is really good at the catch point, He's a fluid route runner, but the issue is he's kind of limited after the catch, and you also have to worry about the cornerback stuff, which is he can kind of get dunked on as a cornerback. He allowed 5 touchdowns, and I think 2 of them were just straight up jump balls. And he's not the greatest when it comes to more physical and bigger receivers. He allowed like not 200, but he allowed 414 yards last year, which is kind of a lot. And then you have to always worry about the snap count. Are you playing him too much? Are you wearing him out? He was injured last year too, but you combine a good receiver and a good cornerback, and combine them, you would get an elite player. But outside of that, I don't really know where he plays in the NFL. I think he just fits best kind of as a hybrid, what he's doing right now. Jabbar Muhammad, a transfer from Washington to Oregon, played very well in the college football playoffs and in the Pac-12 championship. I would say he's best in zone coverage. Sebastian Castro is my best slot cornerback in this year's class. Had the best grade in the slot, had the best passer rating allowed in the slot. And another white cornerback, shout out to them, out of Iowa. Of course, they put Cooper DeJean in the NFL, and they put Riley Moss in the NFL as well. But Sebastian Castro, unlike Cooper DeJean, is a true slot cornerback, where I think he thrives immediately as a slot. And then you have Denzel Burke. My issue with Denzel Burke right now is that he's getting cooked in the spring training against Jeremiah Smith. Again, Jeremiah Smith was a #1 player in this year's class, but other than that, Burke is a good run defender, good in man coverage, but he's a bit stockier, but not kind of limited with his hip flexibility and fluidity. Kind of a more of a stiff cornerback. And you have Takario Davis. A lot of people have him mocked in their way too early first round drafts. I did as well, but it has to be later because he allowed 4 touchdowns last year, no picks, and quite a bit of yards. But he's a guy that has a ton of potential who could be a lot better. Again, Arizona is a big potential team next year to be in the top 10. But big cornerback, long wingspan, is fast. You have Quincy Riley, Andrew Mukuba, transfer from Clemson to Texas. He's primarily in the slot. He's played safety before. Very good in zone coverage. Alex Johnson, Fentrell Cyphers coming back. These two coming back for another year. And then Jason Marshall, of course. And then I'll quickly go over the safety class. You got Malachi Starks, who's my favorite safety in this class. Do it all. He had, I think, 3 picks last year as well. All-Pro or All-American. Very good year out of Georgia. And then you have Xavier Watts, another guy who can play downhill. Can play strong. He plays everywhere pretty much. Can play the slot, the box, the free safety position. Can guard slot receivers. Another do-it-all guy out of Notre Dame. Again, another All-American. Then you have Xavier Nwankpa out of Iowa. Strong safety. Can play on the ball as well and can be a good run defender in the box. Kevin Winston Jr. Some people have him listed as the best corner or the best safety in this class. Definitely don't think that. But again, good as a free safety, like a true free safety, playing back in those in those shells, cover 2 shells. Rod Moore, coming back from Michigan, another good guy with smaller safety, but good speed. Another guy who is a true free safety, just plays down the field. Shiloh Sanders, I have coming in at the 6th cornerback position. He is not a true free safety. He can get beat over the top, and he does have some tackling issues, or not issues, but inconsistencies. But his best ability is like hitting people, basically. His hit stick, very, very, very. I mean, I don't know how many forced fumbles. I think it was 3, but hit sticks all day with Shiloh Sanders. And then you have Jetty Barron, Latham Ransom, and then Malachi Moore. But that's going to do it for my 2024 or 2025 NFL draft board. Let me know some guys that I should add to this board. Let me know some guys you're looking out for next year's season. And, of course, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe as always. That's going to be it for the 2025 draft right now. I'm going to move on to my off-season schedule, of course. And that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.